can hear this as well and be blessed by it. Also, if you don't mind as well, tag somebody in this. Those who are watching by Facebook Live, you guys are amazing. You've been doing this over and over again. So please hit that share button so someone can hear this and they can join in. So also tag someone in this as well. You're going to be blessed by today's lesson. So let's dive right in and explore how we can unleash our potential. Let me say this to you as we're getting started today. This series, attendance-wise, you guys have been amazing. You've been amazing during the attendance. It made me feel real good to have you guys here, all these lessons, and those who are watching online, your responses, the number of shares and likes and all that good stuff. You guys have been amazing, so thank you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us during this series. It tells me that it's doing something, it's stimulating you, it is poking you, whatever, it's helping you out. So again, thank you so much. Let's get started today as we'll dive into unleashing our potential. One of those beautiful sounds to ever enter into the ears of an individual is to hear the first cry of a newborn baby. You know, it's really quite amazing. You know, that the first time that newborn begins to cry, there is joy, there's celebration, there is elation, there is a sigh of relief because now this life that has been in the womb for all these months has now finally made their entrance in the parents. Although there's imaging that you can utilize and see what the baby might potentially look like. Now you get a chance to see that baby for the first time and hold the baby in your arms. Yet the arrival of that baby and the cry of that baby signals the arrival of responsibility and potential. With every baby that comes into the world, there is responsibility. With every baby that enters into the world, there is also potential. As the parents cradle and coddle that child, they are caressing potential, countless and endless possibilities they hold in their arms. Yet, wrapped in a blanket of responsibility is a baby himself who has become responsible because of his entrance into the world. And he has awesome potential, tremendous, immeasurable possibilities. And as that child enters into the world, it enters into a world of possibilities, constant learning as that child comes in, and the child becomes now not only entering into the world, but they have all these responsibilities. And yes, believe it or not, children come in with responsibilities that compound over and over and over again through time. And so the parents were pregnant with potential, and the child was born with potential. Yet potential does not come without responsibility. Again, potential does not come without responsibility. Repeat this after me. Potential does not come without responsibility. That's important to know, is that with potential, there's always responsibility. Responsibility it's defined as the state of being reliable, dependable, accountable, answerable, and also trustworthy. That's the idea of you cannot be responsible without being answerable. You can't be responsible without being trustworthy. It comes with being accountable. Responsibility involves entering into a contract or an obligation. It entails a covenant. Every responsibility that you take on, there's always a covenant that comes along with it. And even though there is no written law or written contract that's established, there's always a responsibility that comes with every covenant that you enter into, or there's a covenant with every responsibility that you have. When we consider responsibility, it is the transfer of something that's valuable to a receiver who has been entrusted to achieve some sort of positive results. So if someone gives you their keys, the keys to their car, they're trusting you to do well with their car, that they're trusting you not to do damage to their car, that they're trusting you to be responsible with something that is valuable to them. If they give you the keys to their house, same concept, they're trusting you to be responsible with what they place into your hands. Now, think about this. Remember the parable of the talents? We have the guy with the 5, the guy with the 2, and the man with the 1. We did this a couple of years ago when we were investigating talents. A talent is equivalent to 20 years' wages, by the way. One talent is equivalent to 20 years' wages. So imagine the guy with the 1 talent, he was given 20 years of wages. God help us. The guy with the 2 talents was given 40 years worth of wages, and the guy with the 5 talents was given 100 years worth of wages. If we were to take that and translate that into today's money at minimum wage, the guy with the 1 talent was given around $770,000. Yeah. He was given around $770,000. That's what today's minimum wage. Now, if we were to take that and then translate that into the gold market value, then the guy was given about $1.4 million. That's the guy with the 1 talent. He was given about $1.4 million. So think it's anywhere between $770,000 to $1.4 million. So then you take that and the guy who has 100 5 talents, which is 100 years worth of salary. The master is really trusting these individuals because he's putting something in their hands. Now, consider what they were supposed to do. They were to take what they had and they were to work with what they had. So the guy with the 5 ends up with 5 more. Okay, he's being responsible. He's showing positive results, which shows then he went from 100 years, which was given to him. He worked it so well, he gets 100 more. So now he has 200 years worth of salary. God help us. The guy with the 40 years, we're giving him 2 talents, he worked it and he gains 2 additional more. So he now has 80 years of salary. The guy with the 1 talent, we already know the story, he did nothing with what he had. If he had worked that, he would have had at least 40 years, but he did nothing with it. So the guy that has the 5 talents, who gained 5 more, received what the guy who only had 1, he is giving him 220 years worth of salary. It's like, good gracious. The master puts this in their hands as a means to trust them, and they had to show responsibility, giving positive results with what was entrusted to them. This tells us then that responsibility denotes effectiveness, faithfulness, and capability. Again, responsibility denotes effectiveness, faithfulness, and capability. In essence, responsibility is simply the ability to effectively and faithfully respond with positive results. Again, responsibility is simply the ability to effectively and faithfully respond with positive results. Keep in mind that potential does not come without responsibility. All humans that are born into the world, that come into the world, come pregnant with potential. On the day that a female is born, she is born having the eggs in her to be able to produce a baby. It's just that it has to develop as she comes of age. The boy, as he is born, he has the sperm in him. He just has to come of age. It's already latent in them. It just has to now come into development so that now it's able to produce. everyone was born with ability. As a matter of fact, a child, on the day a child is born, an infant has almost the size of an adult brain. It blows my mind. An adult brain on the day that they're born, which means then that child is born learning. It's born learning. We know this because the child responds to sounds and noises and voices inside the mother's womb. And the baby is listening to these sounds, responding to these sounds. So the baby's familiar with mom, familiar with dad's voice, and now they're putting the two together. The baby is learning awareness and actualization all the time, all the time. The brain is taking in. Potential is there. The potential is there. And so then, as we've discussed before, potential is the capacity to become or to develop into actuality. Then latent qualities, latent abilities that have to be nurtured so that they're now successful and also useful. Each person has tremendous capabilities and capacity for potential. However, it is useless unless it is developed and nurtured and released into functionality with a demand placed on it to be able to perform. In the case of the parents and the child, you were born just like them. You were born with potential. You were born with potential. And that potential that you were born with is not just for you, but it's to be a blessing to the next generation as well. Just like the seed has a forest already in it. You had more in you than was evident on the day of your birth. Repeat this, please, after me. I was born with potential. Now, unlike the seed, however, the farmer has to develop the seed, plant the seed, and make sure the weeds aren't choking out the seed. You, unlike that seed, you can't be planted in the ground. You have to be responsible for your environment and begin to work the potential that's actually inside you. No one can do that for you. You have to develop your own potential. You have to work out the giftedness and the talents that's inside you. No one can do it for you. No one can send proxy for you. You've got to decide, I will take control and be responsible for the potential that is latent within me. The fact that you were born is evidence that you possess potential. Remember, potential is useless unless a demand is placed upon it. So the reason why you're asked to do things, the reason why demands are placed, the reason why people expect more from you is because you have abilities that have not yet been seen. So we expect you to be able to perform, and it's those demands that are placed upon you that begin to release the potential that's inside of you. And only you can release your potential. Life is designed with environments that place demands on our potential, yet they remain dormant until necessity is laid upon them. Aristotle said something like this, that long before there was a problem, the solution was already there. It took the problem, he suggests, to bring out the solution. Something like this. He's suggesting then that before there was a heart problem, there was the idea of the heart monitor. You didn't know that you needed a heart monitor until the heart problem occurred. And it was a heart problem that forced you now to craft out the idea of the heart monitor, and you had an intended or an expected result or end result in mind. You wanted to be able to monitor what was going on in another person's heart, and it was a problem that now drew out your potential. It was necessity that mandated an invention be brought forth. So as the saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. Necessity is the mother of invention. Many breakthroughs, many innovations, whether it is in technology, social, medical, educational, the list goes on and on and on and on. They have been achieved because a problem demanded a result, a problem demanded a response. Just like in Genesis chapter 2, keep in mind that the Lord, before there was any plant, before there was any small bush, God had not caused it to rain, and no man was there to work the ground. And so then, he caused the mist to come up, he then makes the man, he then plants the garden, and he puts the man in the garden. And Genesis 2:15 says, the reason why he put you there was to keep the garden and to dress the garden. He gave you assignment. He gave you assignment. So, here's the man. God's first man that he created was teeming with potential, but it was unreleased. It was untapped. He was a full-grown adult with capabilities and talents. He had physical talents, emotional potential, intellectual, creative, spiritual powers. They were all there, totally developed. The issue was they were unused, untapped, and unchallenged. So therefore, God puts the man in the garden, and it was the work that God used to release the giftedness that was in the man. So God's first thing that he does, he places a demand upon the man. He gives man an assignment. And it was the assignment that began to release the potential that was inside of the man. Keep in mind, God's first words was an assignment to you. Be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it, have dominion. He gave man assignment, and it was assignment that brought out the potential that was in man. This man, remember, teeming with potential, had muscles, but they never been exercised. He had a brain that had never been stimulated. He had emotions that had never been aroused. He had an imagination that had never been ignited. He had creativity that had never been explored. So by God giving man an assignment or placing demand on man's potential, now those things that were latent in him had means of expression. So something like this thing. God's demand for man to work in the garden required man to use his physical potential. God's demand for man to cultivate the garden and name the animals activated man's intellectual and creative potential. God's demand for man to procreate stimulated his mental and his emotional potential. God's demand for man to have fellowship with him necessitated a spiritual potential. And brothers and sisters, those same demands that God put on the man then, he puts on us today. And it requires us to work and to grow and to develop in order for the potential that's in us to come into its fullness. So let's go to work. Let's do this. Let's bring out what's inside you so that now the fullness of who you are is completely seen and completely working. Please repeat this after me. The greatest tragedy in your life will not be your death, but what dies with you at death. That will be the greatest tragedy. Your death will not be the greatest tragedy, but really what dies with you at death will be the greatest tragedy. There are countless inventions that are just dormant in the cemetery that never came into fruition. There are numerous ideas that are just lying in the cemetery and they never were acted upon. You want to make sure that everything that's inside you, that you have given it all out. So like the Apostle Paul says at the end in the 2 Timothy, he writes and he says, I am a drink offering. In other words, he says, I have poured myself out. I have fought the fight. I have finished my course. He says, I've kept the faith. What Paul says is, I've given my all and I've poured myself completely out. In other words, he's saying, I can die without regrets, because I gave my all, and I died empty by giving God everything that I have used my full potential. I want you to do me a favor right now. On your paper that you have, write down the percentage of potential that you're using in your life. If you were asked, at what potential are you operating right now? What would that be? Write that on your paper. What potential? What potential are you producing right now in your life? Is it 50%? Is it 30%? Is it 65%? Are you at 85%? Are you at 100% potential right now? What is that? What would that be? At what capacity, what percentage of potential are you using in your life right now in this very hour? Those who are watching with us online by YouTube Live, Facebook Live, at what level of potential are you using in your life right now? If you're tracking with us and you're taking notes, write that down on your paper. That's really important. If you don't mind sharing it in the blog, please submit it in the blog as well. At what level, what percent of potential are you utilizing in your life right now? If you are shocked by your number, if this number frustrates you, you've got some work to do. If it's 35%, you've got work to do. If it's 65%, you've got some work to do. If it's 75%, you've got work to do. If you are operating at 100% potential, you've got some work to do. You've got some work to do, right? So we want you to utilize your full potential. Utilize your full potential. What did we learn last week? Somebody tell me, what was last week's lesson? What did we talk about last week? Yes, sir.
I am a creative innovator.
Okay, innovator, wonderful. Somebody else, what did we learn last week? What did we talk about last week? Those who are online, you guys can chat with us too. What did we learn last week? Yes, ma'am.
God called me in spite of my stupidity. I am qualified to do this.
Amen.
Hallelujah.
Yes, he called me too in spite of my stupidity. Thank God for that. Qualified me. Somebody else, what did we learn last week? Yes, sir.
I think it was, we will appear, we will be like him when we appear, when he appears, and we'll be like him when we see him.
Yes. So we will be as he is.
As he is.
Yes. Really wonderful. Anybody else? We talked about your original state of existence, and we looked at your current state of existence, and we also compared it to your full state of existence. We had talked about that, and you can remember what our opening statement was. Who I was is about to be who I am. Who I am. We challenged you last week with 40 B's, because we realized if you're going to become, then you have to have some benchmarks that will help you to actually begin to become. Just so you'll know, this concept of those 40 B's is a challenge. They're from what we call OKRs, they're objective and key results, that Google uses, that the Intel uses, the Bill Gates Foundation, and all these groups that they're using. What we did, we just took it, we put a church language to it and gave it to you. So these companies that are thriving right now are using the same principles that I gave you in those 40. Now that says something, that if Google is using these principles and we take this and we convert it and we give it into your hands, we're giving you something that help them to become who they are. As a matter of fact, they still use these things today. You've got to decide that I'm going to activate that, I'm going to push for that. Now, by a show of hands, how many of you all took the challenge and you did all 7? You're on number 8 right now. On number 8 right now. 1, 2. Is that so? Up and down. See, a couple. All right, good. So now, I gave you a handout so that you can, if you didn't have this sheet, at least you have this one sheet that you can use over the course of the next 40 days. So use this. I'll also encourage you, post it as well. Let others see it. Don't just keep it to yourself. But the more you see it, the more often you utilize it, the better you're going to be. That's remember again. That's what we want you to be, to become, to exist. For those of you who are on day number 8, what's today? What is day 8? What is that? Be bold. Be bold. All right. Be bold. So you should have been working on being bold today. Those of you who are on day 7. Day 7 is what?
Emotional intelligence.
Be emotionally intelligent. Be emotionally intelligent. Anybody on day 3 or day 1? You should have been on days at least 7 or 8. All right. So now, if you haven't done this, you are doing yourself a disservice. I'm saying to you, if you really want to change your life and change your perspective, you've got to do this. You've got to make it work. It's all right if you had a rocky start. That's cool. Be an awesome finisher. Okay? Be an awesome finisher. Maybe you were slow starting or lackadaisical. That's a fancy way of saying this being you had a lazy start. If that was you, it's all right. Be an extraordinary finisher. Saying, no one, I may have had a rough start, but no one finishes like me. No one is a closer the way that I close. I'll tell you this about myself, and when it comes to running and doing exercise, etc. I hate when I first get started. I'm like, oh, this is horrible. Like I am dying. I'm like I want to quit. I don't want to do this. All that. But then somewhere along the way, it clicks in. Oh, you got this. Come on, man. And then I'm like, whoo. And I finally get that excitement. So I know I have to keep pushing myself. I have to keep telling myself, you got this. You can do this. And so I'm saying to you that if your start's rocky, don't worry about that. Be an awesome finisher. Be an awesome finisher. Celebrate along the way as you see an accomplishment. If you're doing it and you've been doing it for 2 days, like, oh, come on, I did something 2 days in a row. Woo, you are bad somebody. Make a big deal about it, because the more you get excited about it, the more you're going to find yourself actually becoming who you're supposed to be. Let's dive into more of this lesson. Growth and development are essential processes that will help your and my potential to come into its fullness. Now, when I'm saying this, these identifiers relate to 4 areas of life, and they actually touch both your psychology and your sociology. What we're doing here today is we want to add in the theological component that helps to balance out your psyche and also your social structures. Every day, your social constructs are being bombarded all the time. What are you doing to repair those social constructs? Because they're battered constantly. Your psychological structure is battered constantly. What are you doing to repair that's your psyche from all the attacks and the constant changes that go on in your life? So you'll have a day that was rough at work, and you had that rough day at work, and you don't realize it just shifted some things in you psychologically. How are you recovering? How are you repairing to be a better you on the next day you go back to work? You had your social setting changes, and changes like someone decided they wanted to leave you, or perhaps someone passes in your life, and just they moved you to another position, or you're surrounded by new people now. All of these social changes begins to affect you, and what are you doing to repair and adjust to be better with all these constant changes? Well, what we're adding today is a theological component, because when we add that in, it was actually God that gave us the idea of sociology and psychology. It was He. We see this in Genesis 2:7 the Lord formed us, but we were not aware until He breathed upon us. Glory to God. We did not come into self-actualization until He breathed upon us. So it was the knower who gave us knowing. Did you catch that? It was the knower that gave us knowing. So you cannot know without the knower. Glory to God. And so then that means if we're trying to live life without the knowledge of the one who knows, then our life will always be imbalanced. Jesus actually levels you up, glory, and He makes you a better person by having relationship with Him. The truth is, brothers and sisters, the character of Christ and living a Christian life just makes you a better person mentally and socially. If there were no heaven and if there were no hell, the reality is being a Christian, following the examples of Christ, just makes you a better person. Just makes you a better person. It makes you think better. It makes your social constructs better as well. But devoid of that, then now we have to rely on therapists to be able to give us some sort of balance to life. But we have to rely on counselors and coaches. And hear me please, I am not against that right now. I'm not teaching against any counselor, life coach, therapist, etc. We all need therapists, counselors, etc. I would just interject, especially those who are Christ-centered and have a strong theological base, so that now we become what we're supposed to be. Now, so let's consider then. Your growth and your development hinges upon 4 areas of life: biological, cognitive, social, emotional, and spiritual. Bear with me for a few moments. Don't drown in this. We'll swim right through it. You're going to be okay. All right. Biological. This deals with just physical changes that you have in your life, from your genetic code, your brain development, your height, your weight, motor skills, lifespan. All of those things deal with your biological component. Number two is your cognitive, the cognitive processes which involve the way you think, the way you gain knowledge, the way you express knowledge through language. All of those are important for your growth and your development. Here's what's interesting. I'll teach a lesson, or I will preach, and someone will come to me afterwards after church, and they'll say, "Oh, Pastor, you just really blessed me today." And I'll say, "Oh, wow, okay, wonderful." And they'll say, "You said, such and such, and it was you just spoke to me." And as they're saying it, sometimes I'll say, "Well, I didn't say that at all." I didn't say that. But I get it. It's not, I said it jokingly. I get it because what I said, their brain was processing it based on where they were in life. Okay? Just based off of how they were learning in that given moment. That's how they interpreted what was said to me. My brothers and I, we did an experiment once. We took a text, and all of us sat down with the same text, and we, after taking the time to look at the text, etc., we began to elaborate on the same text. And what's interesting was, we all came up with something completely different in that text from the other person. Same exact text, but each of us had a different idea, a different interpretation about the same text. The reason is, it's where we were in life, depending on how we interpreted and how we learned or how we gained information. You can find yourself reading the Bible and read the same text you read before, and one text you read, and you're like, oh, you chuckled and you laugh, and then you read it, weeks, months, or even a year later, and you find yourself just bawling and tears just rolling your face, and you'll say to yourself, I read it before, but I didn't cry then. The difference is you were in a different place cognitively. And that didn't change how you process the information in that moment. Social emotional processes deal with how you build relationships, how you express your emotions in those relationships, and in how you develop your unique personality. And so all of us engage with people in a different fashion. All of us build relationships differently from of the people. You've got extroverts, you've got introverts, you've got introverts, extroverts, and there's all these varying pairs and combinations that we all have. Some may have been started out as an introvert and they end up in life being an extrovert. And there are those who start out as an extrovert and they end up being an introvert in life. But all of these things you can work on, develop, and also repair and improve in your life. I've told this in all three, to the two I was in before, so I'll tell it here as well. I am I'm the second born. For the longest time, I was the middle child because Levi was older, Lance was younger, and then my sisters were born years later from us, so that we had this span between our family. So I was the middle child for a long period of time. And so Levi was always the first to get something, and Lance was, he was baby, and so Lance was always coddled with everything. And then there is LaMont. If you have the textbook of middle child syndrome, I was the textbook exactly for that. I was there, but I felt like my voice was not heard. I was there, but I felt like my opinion was not valued, and so I was getting the hand-me-downs. I was just kind of squashed there. I was there, but I felt like I was invisible. Nobody noticed me. No one cared about what I was going through, and I didn't realize that psychologically this was weighing on me socially, emotionally, and it really didn't ring true until my senior year of high school. You know, you have the senior superlatives that you have, and you have most likely to succeed, most athletic, blah, blah, blah. Well, I got, over the intercom they called, the most shyest goes to LaMont Turner. Please report to the library, to get your picture taken. So now, here I am walking out of the class, going to the library because I have been selected to be the most shyest in school. Now, mind you though, in that same announcement, I have won the Good Citizen of the Year. Now, how can you be the Good Citizen of the Year who is the most shyest? It doesn't seem to measure up at all. So I'm walking to the library to take the picture, and I'm mad. I'm telling you, I'm scheming. I'm like, I'm not shy. So I'm fussing the whole time, and nobody hears my conversation because the whole argument was inside my head. In my head, and I didn't realize I got a real problem because maybe I am really shy because I'm expressing this entire argument and nobody hears this argument that's going on. It's actually inside me because I had learned to deal with my voice not being heard and my opinions not being appreciated. That makes sense to you? And so then I had to decide I got to make some changes. Now, mind you, I had already been preaching 2 years by that time. I don't know whether that happened, I'm a preacher who was the most science. And then God had the nerve to call me into passion. I'm like, what? I have issues, Jesus. I'm all right with sitting in the corner not talking at all. So then I had to force myself to begin to work on being an extrovert. And I still have, for some people, it's easier for you to be a social butterfly. Like John never meets a stranger. John can talk to anybody at any given time, and he's great at it. I'm like, dude, I don't know how he does that. I'm like, So I had to learn to force myself to be in situations like that. So one of the reasons why, when I go out of town, I take Ubers. It's a social experiment for me. I took an Uber to force myself to talk to somebody I have no idea who they are. It forces me to begin to engage in conversation. And so my icebreaker is, so you like doing your job? I've worked that question several times, and I found sometimes I met some really good people, and some like them didn't want to talk at all. I got you. One guy, I said that once to somebody, and he says, I have a camera in the car. I'm like, dude, I ain't gonna bother you. I'm like, be cool. I got a camera right here. I'm like, well, what does that mean? I just ask you, do you like your job? But my point is, it's for me. I had to now put myself in situations where I am developing and becoming, so that now the potential that's inside me, I'm bringing it to its fullest potential. Now, For a believer then, for the believer, the spiritual component is what intertwines with all of these other three processes. When we start to work on the character that Christ has and begin to work that into our lives so that we now measure up to the same. When we comply with the fruit of the Spirit and we begin to produce that in our lives, we'll notice that the cognitive begins to improve, the physical begins to improve, and the social emotion begins to improve as well. Jesus shows us something that's real amazing in Luke 2, verse 52, and it's about Jesus' process. The Bible says that Jesus grew in wisdom, that's cognitive, and stature, that's biological, and in favor with God, that's spiritual, and men, that is social, emotional. And so your growth and development are essential for your human experience. They help you to begin to become, it induces your ability to be alert and to be available and also usable as well. The idea of development actually brings you to a point of maturity. Developing helps you to actually become strong, mature, settled, solid. Here's the amazing about development. Development, there's four things we can consider. Number one, development always falls back. Number two, development proceeds from being general to specific. Number three, development is a product of your environment. And number four, development is predictable. It's predictable. What am I saying about that? Well, these processes of development, they're measurable standards. If we can measure growth and we can measure development, then we can measure your potential. If we can measure growth and we can measure development, we can measure your potential. I'll give it to you again, make sure you get it. If we can measure growth and we can measure development, we can measure potential. I'll look at you one more time when you put that percentage down. The reason why you put that number for your percentage is because you're measuring what you believe your potential actually is. Yeah. You did it. You measured your potential. You determined, based off of your own analysis, that this is the level of my potential right now. And you measure it based off of, it could be a number of things. What you're producing, what you've done, what you think you're capable of doing. I'm not sure what all components that you use, but you use a measurement system to determine the ability of your potential. Keep in mind, all potential has an expected end. And the Lord tells us about our assignment in Jeremiah 29 and 11. I know the plans I have for your life, the Lord says. God has plans for your life, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, but plans to bring you to an expected end. Means God has an intended destiny for you. There's an intended destiny that God has for you. Now, will you reach that destiny? Will you reach the intent that you have in your mind as well? Please repeat this after me. God places demands on your potential by giving your ability responsibility. Yes. God places demands on your potential by giving your ability responsibility. The need for growth. The need for growth. Development and growth, the growth of your potential, is absolutely essential for your life. It's absolutely essential for your maturity. God gives us spiritual gifts to be able to help you and I come into the full capacity of our potential and also our destiny. He gives these gifts, the Bible says, for the unity of your faith, the knowledge of the Son of God, for the mature manhood, and for the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. In other words, God has an intended destiny for you. He knows what you're capable of doing. So he provides these gifts to bring stability into your life, to bring sobriety in your life, a sense of soberness and being awake or alert, to bring education or knowledge into your life, and to create a lovable character about you. In other words, as God gives the gifts, these gifts are to help you now to come into the fullness of who you are, so that now even your ability to be able to love people enhances you. It's amazing to be able to see that your potential helps you to love, show grace, and favor to others and mercy who perhaps may not even deserve it, but because it's being worked out in you, you become teachable and you're willing to work with other people who are coachable and teachable as well. But this does not come being isolated one from the other. The only way that we're going to grow is that we have to actually connect to one another. He knows that your potential cannot grow unless there is connectivity. So when we sing the song, that I need you and you need me. We're all a part of God's body. Maybe we don't sing it as often as we should. The reality is, we need one another, and that connectivity one with the other will stimulate the growth that we need in our life to actually become into the fullness of our potential. So then, how do we grow? How does this happen? There's three ways. Number one, we grow by staying connected to Jesus Christ. That's our vertical relationship. We grow by staying connected to Christ. Okay? Number two, we grow by staying connected to the believers or to the body of Christ. Horizontal relationship. The more you are around believers, the more you'll find yourself becoming sharpened, becoming better, becoming stronger in love, stronger in grace, stronger in the knowledge of God. And number three, you grow by staying connected to your divine purpose. You grow by staying connected to your divine purpose. When you figure out that the inwardness and the inward relationship that is needed for you, there are some assignments that you just won't take because it is not a part of your destiny. It's not that you couldn't do it, it's that you're not going to do it because this is not down the road of your purpose. I've discovered that there's some things I could do, I just don't do because it doesn't help me with my potential. And you've got to be able, when you know your giftedness and know your purpose, you work in those areas to fully develop who you are. And then when you know that, there's sometimes I don't, that's not me. I can refer someone else to you that's more capable than I, because I could do it, but I'm not going to reach my maximum potential because that's not my area. That's not my giftedness. But so-and-so, yeah, they're good at that. Let's work them in that area. Knowing your giftedness and staying connected with that, you're going to find yourself growing in your potential. Could you repeat this after me? Potential requires growth and development. Potential requires growth and development. Here's what you do. We have some paper seeds. We have paper seeds. One of the saints decided to be a blessing unto us, and they had this at their job at an activity, and so they brought the idea, and we want to now help you to become in the same. This paper, you can actually look it and you'll see there are actual seeds in the paper, actual seeds in the paper. I want you in this second to write your potential, what you want to become. Please write that on the paper at this time. Write this on the paper at this time. They are, it's been embedded in the paper are wildflower seeds, and there's a number of them, from daisies to tides to poppies to foxglove to catchfly to maiden pinks to chamomile. There's a number of them that's there. So please write what you want to become, your potential, what you see in you. Please write that on this paper. We have some potted mix in the back. So after, thank you, sweetie. We have some potted mix in the back. So once we finish the lesson today, you can go, and I'm going to ask you to plant that in one of the cups. Plant that in the cups. You can actually plant this paper, and it will grow. I love this. It's It's a wonderful idea. So I'm asking you to write on the paper because that's your potential. And as you see it growing, it will become. Now, here's the instructions. When you plant it, it should be no more than a thumb's depth, okay? Thumb's depth, so put it down. When you put it in there, put a thumb's depth down. And then it must be moistened. It must be moistened for 4 to 6 weeks. So keep it moist for 4 to 6 weeks. And it needs at least 4 hours of sunlight a day. Okay? 3 simple things. Number 1, plant it a thumb's depth. Number 2, moisten it for 4 to 6 weeks. Make sure it remains moist. And number 3, it needs 4 hours of sunlight a day. And remember again, that potential does not come without responsibility. Okay? No. Does it come without responsibility? Yes, sir. Yes, you can fold it up. Cut it, yes, sir, absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be wonderful. Oh God, can't wait to see your potential begin to grow and become. Now, let's as we begin to close the lesson, let's look at reasons why people live less than their potential, and then we're going to look at some keys to releasing your potential. Reasons why people live less than their potential. Number 1, most people don't push themselves to grow. They don't push themselves outside of their comfort zone. And the comfort zone is actually just what it is. It's comfortable. So that they'll stay inside the comfort zone. Here's the amazing thing. I'm going to say this again in just a second as well. Remember a couple of weeks ago that the Kenyan broke the 2-hour mark for running a marathon? Yeah. That's extraordinary, by the way. To give you some sense of what that means, the average human runs a marathon in 4 hours or more. Which meant that he ran that marathon and could have ran it twice when one person could have just ran it.
They try to discredit him already.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, but he didn't run it by himself. When he was running, there was a team of individuals who were there as inspiration and pace setters for him. That's a team of influence, by the way, so keep that thought in mind. I'm going to circle back to that in just a second. So, having that there, he had to push himself outside of just staying in the same pace. Somebody had to be a means of inspiration. Some people never reach what they're supposed to do because they stayed at that one pace and decided never to go any faster. It's been interesting for me. Now, I often compete with my own self. I want to see can I beat what I just did. But I also see I was at a gym and this lady was on the a machine and I saw her. I saw a little sure. So she was going, and I was like, all right, and she said she was getting it too. Like, okay, I see you. So I got on the machine, like she go out through me. So she's going, and she had a good pace, rhythm going. Like, all right, I want to catch up with her. So I started, I'm going, and she just, so I'm like, I'm not going to let her get me. I'm going to do this. So I noticed her, she pushed hers some more. I'm like, what? So I was like, all right, I'm pushing it some more too. Because I realized if she was pushing, so I'm going to push myself some more. Now, she finally finished. I slowed my time. But I noticed something. My time improved because I had someone to push me outside of my comfort zone. She never said to me, you have more in you, do it. I just realized, I'm not going to let her, be faster than me. I decided that something has to change, and you got to decide, push yourself. Number two. Some will never achieve because they're unwilling to pursue their dreams. That's what we call average. They don't like demands, they never push themselves, they're just going to stay content with being as they are. I told this earlier, one of the guys played basketball with, he was extraordinary. I've learned it's a small world, so I don't call names because you might be related to him. But he was good. He was great. I mean, you could put him almost any place on the court, and he would make it. God was just good. But he liked to run, and so we're doing fast breaks, and he's like, I'm like, are you kidding me? Come on, dude. But like, he's not running any faster. He's just gonna stay at that that same pace. He's not working too hard to get himself open, and then when we can get him open and we get him the ball, he'll shoot. But he's not working too hard. He's just gonna stay at that same pace. We have to do back and forth, up and down the court and running, and we have to be across the line at a certain period of time in practice. And then the coach would say, do that. Well, and if everybody's not across the line, you gotta do 3 more. Well, we're all mad because he's not picking up the pace. So which means we gotta do more. And I often wonder to myself what he could have become had he just pushed himself. Some people, they just are unwilling to pursue their dream. Number 3, some people never receive their potential because they're surrounded by negative, unproductive, stuck people. Psychology says that you are like the 5 people you spend the most time around. That's interesting. I got the same response as all the adults. Yeah. Psychology says that you are like the 5 people you spend the most time around. So think about your circle of influence. Are they, the people that you're around, are they inspiring you to be better? Or are they just content with life as it is? That's interesting. Wow. It's predictable, the response. Number four. Some women reach their potential because they focus on their failures. They can't live on the past, and they keep circling back to that. Focusing on your past is like driving on a flat tire. You're not going to go very fast, and you won't get very far. And eventually, you're going to mess up the body of, if you keep driving on that tire, you're going to mess up the alignment of your car and also affect your engine as well. Which means for us then, the more you focus on your past, the more you alter your life and you hinder yourself from reaching the fullness of your destiny and your purpose. Number 5, some people never reach the fullness of their purpose because they're not controlling their mind. They allow the thoughts in their head to be the enemy of their potential. So they're plagued constantly by these thoughts, and they won't change those thoughts because they're controlled by those thoughts. Your mind is your greatest asset to unleashing your potential, attaining your highest and your best. That's why the Bible says, cast down every imagination. You got to put those thoughts in check, because if you don't, your thoughts will control you, and you won't trust people, you won't love people, you won't practice forgiveness, and you're never going to reach your potential because your mind is all over the place. Brothers and sisters, don't allow the world to imprison you or even your thoughts to imprison you. The beauty of these things, of this is, all those 5 things that I just mentioned, they can all be reversed. But it's going to take work. It will take effort. So let's look at some keys as we finish. After me, from this day forward, I will no longer be my greatest hindrance. I have now become one of my greatest assets. Now become my greatest assets. Now, 9 things that will help you unleash your potential. Number 1, forget your past. Forget your past. Paul says, forgetting those things which are behind, reaching, stretching, okay? Stretching, which means I'm applying effort to what lies ahead. Forget the past. Quit focusing on what is in the rearview mirror and keep looking at the possibilities of what tomorrow holds for you. You can't keep crying over spilled milk. At some point in time, you gotta clean it up. The more time you keep circling back to the past, the less time you focus on thinking forward. The more you keep focusing on the past, the less time you have living forward. You gotta think forward, you have to live forward. Number 2, remember the ant. Remember the ant. The ant was a problem solver, we saw that. The ant is solution driven. You are a problem solver, and you are solution driven. The ant was always thinking on how to enhance the colony. You must always push yourself to think on how you can enhance the kingdom of God. You're a problem solver. You are solution driven. You are a problem solver. You are solution driven. Number three, have faith like the mustard seed. Have faith like the mustard seed. The mustard seed is not competing with anybody else. Its embryo is so pungent, it's unaffected by the embryo of another seed. It knows who it is. Be content with who God made you, and don't worry about trying to compete with anybody else, because you are your own unique self. And begin to grow and grow and grow. Don't allow the things that are around you or your obstacles to limit you. The mustard seed, its roots are so strong, it pushes obstacles out of the way. So even though your setting may appear to be confining, grow like the mustard seed. You can grow so much, it pushes your limits in your area, and they'll have to make room for you. Glory to God. Keep growing until you provide shade for other people. And when Luke talks about the same text, he says that mustard tree provides nests for others, which means that others can be employed and not just find shade, but they can be employed by who you are. You're a city, you're a business. Go into business and get it done. Number 4, find your strength. Find your strength. Don't envy looking at what somebody else is doing or how strong they are. You yourself can make a huge difference in the world when you decide that you are strong yourself and begin to work in whatever capacity that you are. So what, you're not the scientist, and maybe you are the janitor. The janitor has to keep the lab clean for the scientist to be able to work. If you know your job and you do it well, that scientist will keep you employed because you know how to keep it clean. And the more he receives success, the more he's going to get success to you because you do your job well. Find your strength. Stay there and grow in that strength. Number 5, focus on one main goal. Focus on one main goal. Your potential can be easily attained when you know what that one thing is that you do well and keep working it. Sometimes we are mesmerized because we see somebody else who has multiple irons in the fire. We want to be like that other person, and we're never getting anything accomplished. Focus on the one thing, get that done. When that gets done, go to the other thing. And keep working and keep working and keep working it. If you're not a multitasker and you can't juggle several things well, don't be frustrated with that. Do the one talent, do it well. You can turn 20 into 40, and then 40 into 80, and then 80 into 100. And you can have up to 100 years, glory to God, if you'll keep working the gifting that you have. But if you are a 5-talent person, I say to you, don't sit around being bored because you don't have enough to do. Keep reinventing yourself. Keep pushing the limits. And if you can juggle it, do it, come alive. Be your absolute best. I love doing multiple things at one time. That's when I feel most alive. I'm bored with just doing one thing alone. And so you don't have to worry about being me because that may not be your strength. Find your strength. Work that strength. Number 6, look for continuous improvement. Look for continuous improvement. What area in your life can you improve on right now? What area can you work in this very moment that will make you better? Life is a classroom. Keep learning, keep learning, keep learning, keep learning. Over the weekend, I was in Kingsport, and I was sharing about ears to receive, and I was talking about just the power to be able to become, and so forth. And I mentioned about brain plasticity and how your brain can harden because you don't exercise and so on and so forth. And afterwards, my grandmother, who by the way in a couple of weeks will be 98 years old. 98 years old. Now she walks over to me, no cane, no wheelchair, no walker, by the way. Grandma just walking over there. Lamont, let me tell you something. And so as she's talking, you know, she says, you know, I'm about to be 98, and she starts laughing. And she said, you know, I made up my mind a long time ago. I'm going to learn something new every single day. And she said, so what you were talking about earlier, about keeping that your brain fresh, is why I learned that years ago. And I found out it's true. So I was teasing her. I said, come on, you need to give your brain to science. Oh boy, get out of here. But it's absolutely, and at 90, at 97, almost 98, she still has the capability to live by herself. And that's extraordinary to me, really extraordinary to me. I'm saying to you, brothers and sisters, push it. Keep growing, keep learning, don't stop. Number 7, build an influence team. Who's in your circle? Who's at your table? Who's in your club? The king could not run that race by himself. He had to have others who were there as pacesetters, influencers that pushed him to be able to become. Who's in your circle? Who's at your table? Who's in your club? Who's influencing you? Who's walking with you? Who's encouraging you? Who's in your ear? Who's your iron sharpener that rubs it the wrong way, but when they challenge you, you find yourself being pushed into becoming better. One of my favorite professors was Dr. Brewer, and this guy, he said off-the-wall stuff, challenges them all the time. Made me mad every class. Every class made me mad. And I would leave the class fussing the whole time, determined I'm going to prove him wrong when I come back to the next class. And we'd open up and he'd say, so what do you have to say today, Lamont? And so I started with my argument, and then he'd respond with something else. I'm like, what? This guy is ridiculous. And so this happened over and over all through the semesters. Now, I kept trying to disprove him, and what he was doing was pushing me to actually learn. Why? Because he knew I was comfortable with what I already knew. He also knew that I was comfortable with just absorbing information and without being challenged to actually learn something I didn't know. So at the end of the semester, he shakes my hand and he says, it's been great having you in class. He said, I saw your brain begin to develop over the weeks. And I told him, well, I realized after a while that you were actually pushing me into becoming more. So he is my greatest professor that I ever had, because he actually pushed me outside of my comfort zone. He was my iron sharpener. I mean, I was mad at him all the time, and I almost quit this class several times. I was going to quit this class. I thought this guy is ridiculous. But I so appreciate him today because he was an iron sharpener. Remember, iron sharpens iron. Number 8, think differently. Think differently. Don't allow your current thoughts to stifle you from your potential future. It's what you know that keeps you where you are. It's what you don't know that keeps you from where you're supposed to be. So decide, I want to know what I don't know. And keep learning what you don't know. Because the more you figure out what you don't know, the more you're going to be moving towards where you're supposed to be. Okay? Think differently. Number 9, the final one, is commit to new actions. Commit to new actions. I want to challenge you in this moment right now. Write down 3 new actions that you can do before the end of this year. Write down 3 new actions that you can do before the end of this year. Yes, get your phone out, get your pen out, write it down on the paper, on your phone. 3 new actions you can do before the end of the year. And I want to ask you to do this as well. After you write that down, then share it with the person that is next to you as a sense of accountability. Okay? As a means of accountability. The wonderful thing, when we do the Company of Champions, people put out there what they have the potential to be able to do and what they're setting out to do. What that does, it allows others to hear them say it and now ask them, so how's your book going, Tamia?
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Now we heard her say that on Sunday. So since we heard her say it on Sunday, we can now ask, so how you doing with when's it going to publishing? Because you heard her put out there what she's capable of doing. So we want to see her reach her fullest potential. What 3 new actions can you do before the end of the year? When you've got that down, show it to the person that's next to you, so you have an accountability partner, somebody that sees what you wrote. You don't want to just have it for yourself and keep it in your own head. Somebody needs to see it, so at least another set of eyes is looking at what you wrote on that paper. Glory to God. Commit to new actions. Commit to new actions. Commit to new actions. Commit to new actions. Glory to God. Commit to new actions. You can do it. Yes. It's inside you. Yes. I can't wait to see you do it. No, you've been waiting on it. You can do it. You can do it. It's in you to do. Your potential is waiting on you. Your promise is waiting on you. Your destiny is waiting on you. Your next pay raise is waiting on you. When you decide to push yourself, it's there. It's there. It's there waiting on you. Repeat this after me. Be willing.
Be willing
To do things.
to do things
Today. That will take you. Where you'd like to be.
where you'd like to be
Tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Yeah, you gotta be willing to do things today. Where you would like to be tomorrow. Do things today that will take you where you'd like to be tomorrow. The reality is, the caterpillar thought he was dead. Thought life was over until it became a butterfly. Oh, no, that'll preach right there. Oh, God. Caterpillar thought life was over until it became a butterfly. You're not at your end yet. There's more that can be done. There's more that still lies within you. Yes. The beauty is, even when the Apostle Paul was failing in health and failing in sight, he was still gaining information, and he had someone write down the thoughts that were in his head. That's extraordinary. We would have never known the book of 2 Timothy had Paul not spoke it out and someone else wrote it down. We would have never known the book of Galatians, how not Paul spoke it out of his mouth and someone else wrote it down. I'm saying it to say that, yes, you might be experiencing changes in your life, but there is still potential in you. The reality is, the Gospel of Mark was not the words of Mark, because Mark was not a disciple of Jesus. As a matter of fact, Mark was too young to have walked with Jesus. Isn't that interesting? The Gospel of Mark is the words of Peter. And Peter, who was uneducated and unable to write, told the story to Mark. And Mark was bright enough to be able to write those words down. The epistle of 1 Peter and 2 Peter, same thing. Peter was not an educated man, so he was able to write those things down. Yet, Peter's epistles were written by someone else as a letter, and so now we know what Peter was thinking, because someone else was the scribe to the thoughts that were in his head. Don't allow your limitations to stifle your potential. Glory to God. There's something great inside you. You've got it. You can do this. You believe in you. I can't wait to see what God's going to bring out of your life. Let's pray. Father, I thank you today for this moment. We love you so much. You're an absolutely amazing God. I pray, Lord, that you will lead us, guide us, direct us. Thank you, Lord, for the potential that's just in this room right now, and those that are watching, Lord, online as well. There are so many books that are waiting to be written. There are inventions that are about to come forward. There are projects and concepts and businesses that are about to happen. There are computer programs, there are musical scores, there are songs. It's just amazing. It's amazing. There are clothing designs, and the list just goes on and on and on that people are thinking right now. So I praise you, God. Praise you, Lord, for what's about to take place. I pray, Lord, that this series has impacted us so that it actually pushed us into becoming, sharpened us to the point where we decide we're going to become who you created us to be. Father, help us, Lord, I pray. Thank you, Holy Spirit, that is a teacher, that leads us into all truth, that teaches us all things, and reminds us of all things as well. I pray in the name of the Lord Jesus, that as we get this, as we grasp this, and we begin to run and grow and become. I can't wait to see, Lord, can't wait to see the song, I can't wait to see the book, I can't wait to see the business, I can't wait to see the clothing design, the phones they're going to create, I can't wait to see the app they're going to develop, I can't wait to see the new car design they're going to bring, I can't wait to see the new business that's going to come forth, I can't wait to see, Lord, the investment company that they're going to have, I can't wait to see all those wonderful things that are going to come forth because they decided to work their potential. I give you praise today. We're going to do it, Lord, for your glory, to enhance your kingdom and be a blessing to somebody else as well. I give you thanks. And bless you always. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Let's press the Lord is tithe, and visit with an offering. If you need to look for the Lord's tithe for your offering, just raise your hand. The usher will come to you and assist you with that. Let me give you the upcoming announcements so you know exactly what they are. Thank you for those who went out and yes. Yes, you sure. Thank you for all those who went out today and they voted. So that whatever area township you're in, the voting was there. Thank you so much. And we appreciate you being actively involved in the community. Tomorrow is a fast day. We fast tomorrow from midnight to 4 p.m. Now, what is tomorrow? That was really quiet. What's tomorrow? Fast day. And how long do we fast?
12 to 14.
Yes, so don't forget that. We can fast tomorrow. Veterans Day is on the 11th. Minister Alliance on the 13th. Senior Alliance is on the 20th of November. 12 noon here at the church. Right, all seniors come out and they're having a ball. Last month in October they played bingo, and I'm telling you, it was out of control. They were really enjoying themselves. We had gift cards to Chick-fil-A and what else was it? Royal Farm and a movie theater and Panera Bread, and they were just really enjoying themselves. So you know what you're going to be here. It's going to be great. The 21st to 23rd of November is the D.C. Delaware Maryland Council, which will take place at Highway Way of Faith in Northern Delaware. November 24th is Family and Friends Day. Invite your family and your friends to that as we give thanks together to the Lord. I'll circle back to that in just a second. The 28th is Thanksgiving. The church office is closed 27th to 29th. December the 4th is our final fast day for the year, and that'll be from 12 to 4. December the 6th and 7th is our leadership empowerment. We're asking all leaders, please be present that Friday and Saturday. December the 6th and the 7th, all leaders and upcoming leaders, wannabe leaders, please be there for the leadership empowerment. December the 15th is our Senior Citizens Day. We want to appreciate all of our seniors. And December the 15th to the 22nd is Love Week. We want to show the love of Christ and be a blessing to others that are there. Now, two final things. Circling back to the announcement about Family and Friends Day on the 24th. We want families to be a blessing to families. Here's the concept behind it. We've got two of our small groups that are working to help sponsor this. I'm just the mouthpiece for what they want to do. Families blessing families on that day. We want your family to help be a blessing to somebody else's family by buying groceries for that family to have a Thanksgiving meal. We'll have a list on Sunday of things that you can buy, and also the appropriate times to bring those items as well. We're intending on that Sunday to be a blessing to other families by providing these groceries to help them and be a blessing to them. And so encourage your family, invite them to come, of course, and then let's rally your family. Maybe your family can bless one family, maybe your family can bless 5 families, 10 families, it's entirely up to you, but let's be a blessing to another family during this time. And so again, thank you so much for that. Please see Sister Doretha, and they'll be all set up on Sundays, so you can see them with all the necessary information. If you are in personal need, then please see Doretha. Everything is confidential. Just let her know that you need just some help, and you need some a blessing to let Doretha know that. And we promise you we will not embarrass you, we won't parade you around, none of that stuff. Just let her know. But if you know a family that needs that blessing, please let Doretha know as well, so that she will be able to help facilitate that. And again, thank you guys so much. Lastly, in our efforts, in our building fund, we're desiring to finish up the close of the sanctuary, else what will be into this winter, because winter is coming. And we want to finish up the installation of the wall, as well as also build that wall, installation around the walls, and build the wall, and I'll make it all nice and pretty. We have a quote to make that happen, and so one of the gentlemen, a couple of gentlemen who've been working to do that, they got the final quote together for us, and to insulate everything, it will be $5,600 for us to do that entire project to make the sanctuary nice and comfortable. That's all. Can you believe that? That's all. $5,600, we can do that. And so I'm asking you, we'll start that project this coming Sunday by receiving the income for that. And so please give towards that end. It would be awesome, absolutely awesome, if we could do it in one Sunday. That'd be perfect. If we just do one, and one Sunday, boom, it is done. The reality is, the potential is there. It's all of us aside, and we'll just make that contribution to make it happen. You can start giving tonight if you want to, or you can give also on Sunday. Thank you so much. Those who are giving online, if you guys are watching, please use the hashtag $Z as in Zion, Tears and Different, and CARES, that's $ZT CARES. Somebody on Facebook, if you'll post that for us, please, so that others can know that. Thank you guys so much. Let's stand, we're going home. Over the Lord's tithe, I will pray God's blessing on your life. Let's raise the Lord's tithe and our offering in the air. Father, we thank you that I continue to give you, bring to you your tithe, and with our offering. I request of you this. Bless indeed, increase our borders, let your hand be on the evil, bring you honor and praise. Now I will bless you and keep you, cause to face shine upon you, the Lord be gracious unto you, let us count with you peace. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, God. Good attention.